Always good to have you, Connor. Glad to have you on the show. You got a lot of insights on the redistricting fight. I understand there's a court case now that the Virginia Supreme Court is looking at.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that's interesting about that redistricting fight is both parties have reasons why they did what they did, and I think it's an interesting argument on both sides. But I feel like you've kind of maybe made it down the center on this one, so I'm glad to have you on, and
Yeah.
it's all yours. Let's roll through the redistricting and what you've seen.
Yeah, so I found this really interesting, and I was, as we've talked, I was really intrigued to get kind of your insight coming from, I live in a blueberry up north in Winchester, Virginia. You're down here in the more rural area, and I know that with the redistricting, the rural area got kind of screwed in this one. And what's fascinating to me is as things have rolled out, there is a Supreme Court case going right now to challenge the validity of the vote. There are grounds with which that vote could or that case could overturn the vote. There are procedural errors that may have been made. There are language errors on the ballot that may have been made. I know a big one that's popping up is they called it fairness in voting or something, and that kind of is perceived to be misleading because it actually creates an unfair Virginia. But in looking at it, I was intrigued to get your feedback on it, because it's one where through all of the conversations, there's this aspect of more almost cherry picking, or almost, which shocker, people cherry pick stuff.
Yeah. Cherry picking, gerrymandering.
Yeah, but this, I think it's this. Not a full understanding of the scope to which this is, both nationally, historically, and then at the state level, what really is happening here. Like, what really this fight is about, what really this vote was about on the big picture. So I kind of jumped in and did a little breakdown, and then, playing you in this one and getting your feedback on it. So what's interesting to me is I think that there are two really good arguments that both have a strong basis in credibility.
Okay.
You've got your Virginian argument, and you've got your national, historic, and congressional argument.
Okay.
And so to start with, if this was just a Virginia thing, exclusive to Virginia, I don't think there's any question that this would be an unequivocal no vote. I understand people's arguments both sides, but it's the if this was just Virginia trying to gerrymander its districts to work out Republican voices in Congress and replace them with Democrat voices in Congress, I don't think there's any argument to be made in support of it if you truly believe in a balanced representation. Now, we will always have the people that just want their side to win regardless, and that's where it kind of gets bogged down. But when it comes to Virginia, this isn't a good look if it was just Virginia. We went from a 6-5 somewhat balanced congressional representation. Arguments can be made that how things are set up, cutting up Northern Virginia and Richmond, it might skew that a little bit. But overall, compared to other states that have gerrymandered, it's not bad. It's not the best, but it's not bad.
Right.
And that is now being moved. If this vote goes through and gets certified, they're going to take 4 seats away from the Republican representation, making it a 10-1 congressional representation for the state of Virginia, for the House. The important thing that I think wasn't brought up enough during the run-up to this vote is that there was a built-in expiration date to this redistricting. This was a Virginia ballot measure that had within it, this map expires at the next census, which will be 2030. So by the time all this goes into play in midterms, it's about 3.5, 4 years that will be under this new map. And it is set to expire and go back to an independent, bipartisan redistricting commission in 2030 to reestablish more partisan or less partisan districts, balance it back out.
So, based on the Democrat side, what was the purpose of? Because, like, my view of it, obviously, is with this General Assembly, it was very, very slanted towards aggressive. It's not like the state of Virginia is way far off. I mean, even on this ballot measure, it was what, 50, 51, 40.
Yeah, I think it was about a 2% split,
Yeah.
which to me, I made a comment where I'm like, I'm actually super impressed and super proud of Virginians as a whole who got out and made their
I think
voice
3
heard.
million, and I think the population is almost 8 million or something
Yeah,
like that. So I
and-
mean, almost half of the population voted. So I think it's an engaging conversation.
It was about
I guess
1.6 million voted yes, and about 1.5 million voted no.
And I think the problem that I see more than anything with all of the conversations we're having is I think we don't dive deep enough, and it's probably a weird thing for me to say from the redistricting standpoint. But from my standpoint, both sides, for example, the mayor of New York, for example, very, very far left. I think we would agree that it's far left, and yes, I'm sure there's a lot of people in New York that adopt that viewpoint. But I also think there's a lot of people that aren't, and so, but they knew that was, let's take it to that extreme. So I think one of the problems that I see for candidates, Republican candidates, is we look at it and we go, well, in the governor's race, it was because of this. And I think you and I have discussed this with the balance of government and things like that. And I think things happen on a national level. I think Donald Trump is a very polarizing figure. And I think that this gerrymandering vote, I think the reason the yeses carried it is the motto of stop Trump at all costs.
Yeah, I mean that's so, and that'll I'll jump here in a second to the national argument. What I think is important to note about the Virginia vote, again, 1.6, 1.45 ish. I don't know the exact numbers, but those are ballpark. What's important to note here is, unlike an electoral college or a presidential vote that's a winner take all system, meaning if it's 1,000,000 to 1,000,001 vote, the 1,000,001 wins. This was fully a popular vote. So you'll see a lot of stuff of, oh, Richmond and Nova dictated this thing, which sure, those are the population centers of Virginia. But this was not based on voting districts. This was not based on congressional districts. This was a straight up, you voted and I voted, you voted no, I voted yes, we canceled each other out, done.
But you're assuming I voted no.
I'm pretty sure you did.
All right.
But it's that thing where, like, I just like to remind people that, like, this was a popular vote. The
Right.
vote itself wasn't popular, but it was a popular vote. Whoever had the most won the one. It was a,
Right.
who had the most points at the end of the day.
Right.
And so when people say, like, you always see the maps where it's all this red and then the blue bits of it's like, yes, but that's misrepresentative because land doesn't vote, cows don't vote, chickens don't vote, people do. And so if the places where the people are voted certain ways, that's the popular vote. And it just gets frustrating
I
sometimes.
think that's the interesting part of all the conversations is I look at it and I think I've talked to people on the conservative side and they say in this election, national election in 2024, when Donald Trump was elected, he was elected because he went in and won traditional Democrat, like was up 4 or 5 points because they went into those population centers, into the municipalities and the concentration of people, and he pulled 5 or 6% more vote. It wasn't the Rust Belt or anything else.
No, he ran on stuff that appealed to those areas.
And that is my point on a statewide level. For me, this should be a wake up call for Republicans, and they should say, we don't need to run people that only get elected in bright red areas. We need to represent every single person and put candidates up to do that. And I say that very, very, because I know a couple of the people, not like personal friends or anything like that. Some of these guys that are in there, and they're phenomenal human beings. And I hate that the rules have changed this far into it. because they have a history and they have to work through that, and it affects a lot of different families and things like that. But like from my standpoint, I think the National Republican Party and the Republican Party in Virginia should not be shocked in a governor's race when they lose like they lose, when they have a candidate that is so far off center, if that makes sense, that they're hard to elect. I think she's a phenomenal human being, but you look at her historical record, and it's not good. It's not good for people that are in the middle that are undecided.
Well, and so what's interesting about, and this can be, we can circle back to this one either later at a different day, but what's interesting when you look at the Spamberger campaign and the voting results that I think speak to your point about the polarization of our current president is, while she may not have won every district in Virginia, all but 4 districts pulled back center. She pulled voters from the right back either center or to the left. So you saw this leftward skew of 6 or 10, or I think she won by 15 points, which that's not a close margin. That's a whooping.
Yeah, it was
and
whooping.
So you look at it and you go, to me, what that shows is that people who agreed with the campaign promises of Donald Trump are feeling some kind of way about where they are right now, because enough of them were I think there were 4 voting districts that stayed red, that didn't come back substantially center. So that brings me to, we can kind of take that as the jumping point to the national explanation, because, if we are limiting our scope of what's happening in this redistricting conversation to just Virginia, it's a dishonest conversation. It's a disingenuous conversation, because where my side of things will say is that this started summer of 2025. This started with Texas, with Governor Greg Abbott, who was looking to redraw maps. And when mid-district or mid-decade redistricting, which is not a common thing, it has happened once before by Texas Republicans in 2003, 2004. But when you look at the series of events, I look at this where normally when we have these types of conversations, it's more subjective. This kind of played in, or this kind of played in. To me, I see this much more as a point-to-point timeline, because you can look at 2025 Texas. Greg Abbott's looking at redoing the maps to work out Democrats and gain more congressional seats. Our president reaches out and says, we are entitled to 5 more seats in Texas, and supports it, says you must there were billboards up that said you must redistrict. My side used them in this campaign, used his own words of you must redistrict, because he said it. Now, your side, and what they also used Obama's words saying redistricting is bad. He did in fact say that. But you look at Texas and you go, okay, their legislature, and I'm sure plenty of people will watch this and sit and go, oh, well, it wasn't it wasn't in their constitution, and this, it wasn't illegal to them, and fine, whatever, totally okay. They didn't have to get a vote. But the fact of the matter is, Texas legislature chose to redraw maps, eliminating 4 or 5 Democrat elected representatives for the people of Texas from Congress. In response to that, California put a ballot measure up, Prop 50, allowing its people to vote, which I know it would have gone blue anyway, but it's still, you're letting the people choose. And they said, we will redistrict our areas to counter Texas only if Texas proceeds. We put the vote up to make sure we have our people's approval for it, but we are only going to do this if Texas goes through with it. Texas did, California did. From there, North Carolina, Missouri, Ohio, Utah all tried to do what Texas did, and through legislature, not a vote of the people, redraw their maps. Interestingly, Utah is actually one that kind of shot themselves in the foot, because they were already set up in a way so misrepresentative that they actually ended up losing a seat. They were 4-0 GOP to Democrats. They're actually now, I think they're about to be 3-1, because state judges looked at it and go, no, this isn't fair. This isn't how it's supposed to be. And they actually ended up shooting themselves in the foot and losing a seat. But North Carolina, Missouri.
But when we say, and I think that's one of the most valid points in all of these conversations, they're not losing a seat. They are just having to compete at a different level. Is that a more accurate way of saying it? Because like you can say
No.
So in Utah, it wasn't like it is in this congressional race. The person that is running is not running in the same district. It is a different district that is more inclusive of the other side.
I see what you're saying.
Because I think that's one of the things
technically they're not losing a seat.
Because it's still you still have the ability to compete. And same thing in Virginia. Like you can say all you want, just like in this. I think one of the really cool things about what you're saying is people get to vote. And you can say, well, they didn't have in Virginia, but people get to vote, and based on their vote, you have a winner and a loser. Yep. I mean, one side carried the other. That's the way our country is set up.
Yep.
And so, like from my standpoint, when I look at it from my sense of direction says it's almost like there's a penalty called it's 1st and 15 because you got a 5-yard penalty. Stop complaining. Run the play.
Yep.
And the Republicans still have a chance to run the play. It's just going to be a game. They have to gain 15 yards for a first down as opposed to 10 yards.
So let's look at it this because you're spot on. So technically, if you look at state representation, to your exact point, we can use Virginia. There are 11 congressional districts in Virginia. The whole idea with setting it up, they're supposed to be based on population. Equal population. Let's say we have, let's say we have 11 million people in Virginia. We don't, but for math, it's easier.
It's 1 million each.
1 million in each district, even, and that's how it votes. Wherever they go is how they happen. That's not how it works because of things like cracking and packing and using voter results to manipulate districts to pretty much understand what the outcomes. There's never a guarantee, but there's a pretty good ability as if you look and you say, okay, most of Northern Virginia votes blue. So if we just made Northern Virginia, Arlington, Alexandria, that area, one district, that would be packing because you're packing all the blue votes into one district, meaning you have a pretty good bet that's going to present.
Yeah, because I read a book that was written by somebody on Obama's staff. I think he was a speechwriter, and that's one of the things he said is that it isn't, especially in some of the larger states, there isn't the same level of. So the two senators in California, they were, or let's just say Virginia. We'll do it easy, easy math. They represent basically 7 million people, so 3.5 per person. Well, what is California? California's population is huge, and so like their voice is the same, and that's how my understanding of the way the Constitution was set up in the United States was the representation. The Senate was always supposed to be the more stable. They have a longer term, but still by population, it's still supposed to be representative of that population.
No. So Senate,
but not in the Senate. I'm saying in the House of Representatives.
Yes.
It's supposed to be based on population.
Yes.
And it shouldn't that's why and that's what I thought was really interesting about that book is like that was how we started annexing other countries and buying other states. Republicans and Democrats have been at this a long time, and years back when we did different purchases of land, that's how they set it up. They said, okay, Utah would get 4 new House of Representative members. Now we'll allow you to buy this state, which has this amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and so there's also sort of when states were first being made, I think it was 200,000 people or 600,000, somewhere in there, was the minimum number of population. I think it was 200,000 that you needed to count as a state. Otherwise, you're a territory.
And that's why but that's why they divided them up and everything else. So gerrymandering and like maneuvering and everything else has been going on since we started annexing.
Yeah. So
West.
it's Eldridge Gerry, and it's actually kind of a funny story. He was, I believe, Massachusetts governor and tried to rework these districts, and allegedly someone's like, "Oh, that one district looks like a salamander," and they're like, "No, that's a gerrymander."
Okay.
Gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering.
So that was 17 something.
So
it's been around
so
since the beginning.
So as much as everybody's screaming like this is a unique fight, this has never happened before. It has.
Well,
it's been happening for it in some form.
Yes.
The two parties have always looked at an edge, and they've always, whoever's in power is the one that like tries to drift things their direction.
Yes. So,
and the fear, I'm summarizing, the fear of Democrats in Virginia is you already are screwing us. Like, we are controlling the state on the statewide government.
Yep.
But you're kicking our ass other than our two senators, you're kicking our ass.
Yep. So
in the
Senate,
rest of the state.
When it comes to gerrymandering, Senate does not play a role in it. There's 100 of them. Each state gets 2. That's their thing. That's done.
Right.
For the House, there's 435 members of the House, divided based on population. You've got California has 54. I think Wyoming has like 2. We have 13. 11. 2 senators. 11. And so it's based on your state populations. Now, so when I say we're losing a seat, what it means is districts are being drawn in a way that moves known voter counts into a position where one party more than likely has an advantage over the other. So it's cut up, cracking and packing, putting everyone into one district. Cracking is starting a whole bunch of districts. If you look at the maps now, starting a whole bunch of districts in Northern Virginia and then peeling them out so that the population center here negates a whole bunch of other rural areas. So that's cracking that area.
But a candidate that ran central on either side could potentially win that.
Could. The goal is to set up.
I'm not saying that everybody had a pure motive, but in response to this, there is a possibility to run a candidate that is more central. Because we run statewide candidates all the time.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I think we're at a disadvantage on the Republican side. But like from my standpoint, I don't think it's all the gloom and doom.
No. Well, and so here's the counter to that, or not the counter, but the kind of to your point of that is, so if you have a district that's 80% blue, 20% red, and you're trying to figure out a way to take a district that's 60% red, 40% blue, and make it more competitive or whatever, you might rework those district lines so that you pull 20% off of that 80-20. So it becomes a 60-40, and then you put that in another district that one's 60-40 in favor of blue based on voter reports and blah, 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 voter rolls and whatnot. So you've now just taken a seat because you've now made a district that was originally leaning red. You've worked it in a way that you now have more, in theory, blue votes in that district to pull it to the other side, losing the seat. And so when you do that, though, you can put yourself in a position called dummy-mandering, where you make the states too close. It might be a 55 in favor of red, 45 in favor of blue, meaning that for my side to win, I only have to pull about 6% of your voter base my way, and now it's 51 me, 49 you. And that's where you start to see Florida actually today put maps up that cut a little close to that margin that might be, it could result in a position, and to your point about the president, in a position where you are at a time of, our president is very divisive and he's pushing his own party, kind of the more centrist Republicans, away because of the things he's doing. Well, now if you dilute your districts of Republican voters too low, and some of those Republican voters are disenfranchised by what's happening in the White House, it's not the policies we want, it's not what you promised. Well, now they might vote blue in this next House congressional election. And so you've diluted the power of your districts too much in efforts to win, and you might actually lose that seat. You might, be counterproductive to what you're doing. So, back to the big national picture. If Texas, North Carolina, Ohio, Missouri, and now Florida did what they wanted to do with redistricting, and Democrats did absolutely nothing to push back, in theory, they would net somewhere between 12 and 15 Republican favorable seats. It's not guaranteed, but because of how they drew them, it would technically be a Republican positive seat, meaning at this next election cycle, those seats would go red rather than blue. So the reason why California and Virginia got involved was Texas put up about 4 or 5. California was able to counter those. North Carolina, Missouri, and Ohio net 4. Virginia was able to counter those. The wild card now is Florida, where Republicans might still net potentially 2 seats, ignoring the dummy-mandering part of things. And so the national conversation, and we talked about this a little bit before going on, was if you look at Virginia, Republicans have lost their voice, and I'm not in favor of that. I generally kind of liked a more balanced state because you get a true representation of what the state wants.
So explain what it looks like to lose your voice when you say that.
So looking at the state of Virginia, if votes go the way they do, it means that in Congress, we will have 10 Democrat congressional representatives and 1 Republican congressional representative,
And two
meaning
Democrat senators.
and two Democrat senators. But that doesn't really apply in the House until bills go one way or the other. But for
Right.
the House alone, what that means is if there's a policy that Virginia is in favor of, whether it be health care or paid family medical leave or these things that are more liberal policies, more Democrat policies, it means that in Virginia, we've got 10 yes votes for liberal policy. So Republicans in Virginia, as much as half of the state might not want to be part of the green initiative for energy efficiency, doesn't matter. We have 11 votes. If it becomes a national thing, Virginia will vote yes for it, and it will pass because of Virginia. Well, it won't pass, but Virginia will bring 10 yes votes and 1 no vote to the table.
Right.
So when you lose what I mean when we say you lose your voice is that are your desires, is how you want things done, being equally represented in Congress. Why you want that is because if you want something and I want something, ideally we would have as close to a 50-50 split within Congress as possible, because that would force conversation. That would force the ability of, hey, you're actually a Republican representative, but you kind of like green energy. So you might vote for my green energy bill. Or I'm a liberal, but I kind of, I understand the need for a little less, tax breaks or whatever, a little less government oversight on pick a sector. So I might sign on to your bill. And it creates bipartisan legislature, which is what you want. You want everyone working together for the betterment of the country. What we have right now is a heavy lean Republican. I forget the exact split, but I think it's like 230 something to like 210, 217, something like that. There is the Republicans have the advantage in the House, meaning they can pass whatever they want because they mostly need, on most legislature, they need a simple majority, 51% of the vote, and it goes through. Well, if you have more than 51% of the seats in the House, you can pass whatever you want. My big example is the One Big Beautiful Bill. That pretty much got pushed through the Senate and the House just on Republican votes. So as someone who opposed multiple aspects of it, my voice, my representation was not heard. No Democrats were involved, no Democrats were used. It just got pushed through. So when we say losing our voice, anyone, left or right, it means that what you want out of your state or your representation is not happening because it's just not present in the House.
I think the biggest, for me, honestly, I don't know that there are any representatives on either side. I think there are so few on either side. They're like Fetterman from Pennsylvania. There's no, this is right, and this is what I'm going to do. And I think that's the problem. I think
we have gotten to a point where it's more party line than policy.
Because for me, when I look at it and I think about it, and I think we are taking people that are just what you said. They're not in a position to negotiate because they're no, the district that I represent is extremely conservative or extremely liberal. So there's no reason. Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter the 10-1 because I don't think from what I've seen, there are very few people that are having conversations like we are having that are like, okay, this is what's important, so we need to have this conversation. It is, no, we're going to take this and ram it down your throat, and that everybody's getting their one-liners in of like, well, you need to do this, you need to do this.
And historically,
so,
you see that, you look at the Affordable Care Act, kind of happened. That was a more Democrat-controlled House, if I remember correctly, and it kind of just got pushed through. The One Big Beautiful Bill, exclusively Republican legislature, that got pushed through with no contributions from
I
the
think
left.
that's what's so,
And that's the divisiveness, is that it's not a conversation in there anymore. And so you'll see, like, Fetterman's a weird one, because as Democrats hate him.
Yeah, they do.
Because, not necessarily because he's wrong, but because the Democrats are in a position where they need every vote they have,
and they
to kind of run some form of interference to make it a conversation, to compromise on things. And because he keeps jumping for what, and I respect him for voting how he believes, 100%.
Right.
But what that does when we are in a position of party line legislature, party line politics, it throws a wrench into things, because that's one vote that it's a wild card. You can't count on it one way or the other. And a lot of that, we can bring it back to gerrymandering in a way, but a lot of that you need to be in a position where states are representative. Now, where it gets tricky.
Is it representative, or is it more a symptom of the people that got me here expect this from me?
Both.
And so I'm going to have to go along the lines. We always used to joke about people that went into a certain law enforcement agency, and we would joke like they just unscrew their brain, dump what they want in there, and then screw it back on. And that's how they make them, because they all think alike. And I feel like there is no place in either party for someone who is like, no, this is what I believe. This is what's best for my district. And so I'm going to go do this. It's too many. I think everybody they can go up there with the purest of motives, but at the end of it, they are run into this wall, and the wall says, you're going to have to do this to get on the committee that you want to be on. You're going to have to do this, this, and this, and you have to play. You think you're going up there for one thing, and when you get up there, you're playing by somebody entirely different.
100%, and it's a I'm gonna call it a cancer of the system that we're currently in. Because ideally, what you want for exactly, I think truly there are more people that would fall into that presentation if the margin was closer. If you only had to sway a few people one way or the other, you would see a lot more people voting how they truly felt on policy, because it would involve compromise and working together and adding little bits here and there.
I'd like to think that that's true, but I think
I'm being optimistic. Probably,
I think it's just the fear of losing what I think.
And so
I think they've obtained power. They're in power, and the only way they can lose that power is they go against the big power that has got them to that position, and it's too terrifying. And I think that's Fetterman's a classic example, because he obviously doesn't care. He dresses however he wants. And he represents his state. And I think, for me, I think it's just courage. It really is. And I'll get on a soapbox as far as law enforcement. If the leadership in law enforcement took a stance and said, this is what law enforcement looks like, this is what you can expect from law enforcement, I think it would totally change the way the general public views law enforcement. I think we're getting cute and going like, hey, this is very entertaining. Look at what we're doing on Facebook. And we're not saying like, hey, our primary responsibility is to keep you safe. We are going to go into this neighborhood. It's a violent neighborhood. There's a chance that we're going to have a violent encounter with someone, but that violent encounter occurs away from your home as a general citizen. So as a citizen, you don't have to worry about that same person, because just because we went into that neighborhood, we don't have a wall. They can come into your house anytime, and they will. Yeah, I mean, there are people out there that's what they do. And I think if law enforcement leadership did a better job of saying like, I know this doesn't look good, but at the end of the day, this is necessary, and this is what needs to be done. And I think it's the same way on a national level. Is like, hey, I'm sorry, Republicans, the rules have changed. Step up, have the courage to put people in there that can win. And because
And it goes
to
both
me,
ways.
I think they're set up
Democrats.
to do that. Based on what you're saying is, if we get a central candidate that appeals to both sides and has shown the ability to work on both sides, and they put them through there. I'm not saying somebody in name only, like the lieutenant governor, because they wanted somebody that, well, this is the first openly gay cabinet member or whatever they call it, like executive member, executive ticket for the Republicans. Like, that's a name only, in my opinion. It's, because if it was really that important, they would have talked about it the entire thing. It was just kind of an ad lib thing. By the way, he's this.
Yep.
And so, like, for me, actually get a candidate out there that believes it has a moral compass. And I'm not saying everybody doesn't, but I'm saying has a moral compass and says, this is what my history has been, whether it's somebody that's run for local elections or something that has shown a history of working across the aisle. Take somebody on a school board or a Republican in Fairfax or something like that has proven their ability to work with Democrats, and that's who they need to run with, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's to your point of cops are there for a reason. Congress is there for a reason, and it's to do the bidding of the people.
And they don't. They can't even do it. They can't even do a budget. You were talking earlier of, like, they had to have like a assassination attempt to fund, and it's just ridiculous. And I know you have a different view of that, but I mean, you have to have something major happen to, like, draw the attention back to be like, hey, could you imagine if like, how pissed off we get when the mailman doesn't deliver our mail? That's their one job, deliver us our mail. We've got a Congress, the House of Representatives. What is their one job? Fiscal responsibility to have a budget, and they can't even do that.
Yep. Well, and so, to kind of circle it back for a second, because you brought up a point that we might be able to touch on here in a little bit.
Touch on it. Roll it.
But so to finish with the representation point. So anyway, long story short, the national picture, due to gerrymandering, the reason why states like California and Virginia got involved was essentially just to offset what Texas and Florida and Missouri and all that were doing, to try and keep inevitably, when we come up on midterms, it's looking more and more like the Democrats are probably going to do a pretty good sweep, just because of the state of things right now, that divisiveness and that polarizing-ness of the administration right now. The general consensus seems to be they're going to be in a pretty good position to at least pull it back more even. Right. And so to kind of prevent that, a lot of GOP states are trying to eliminate strong blue seats, to try and make that not happen. Seemingly, that seems to be the national approach. And so California and Virginia got involved to try and mitigate that bleeding, so to speak. Now, where it gets interesting is when you look at this, I can sit here and say it started in 2025. It started with Texas. This series of events, Texas, California, North Carolina, Missouri, Ohio, Virginia, Florida, that started in 2025. And people are going to say, no, 2021 with Illinois or New York and Illinois. Sure, that was 4 years ago. And that was New York attempted it. Their stuff got shot down, and they were forced to redistrict more fairly. Illinois, theirs went through. Maryland, theirs went through. But what gets really hard, or what becomes difficult, like so many of these subjects, if you start playing the yeah, but you guys game, is you can sit there and say, yeah, you're right. Democrats tried to pull some stuff in 2021. You also had stuff happen in 2026. You had the red wave or the red map in 2003, which was, or 2001, 2002, which was Republicans realizing that down ballot races, the House seats, the state level races, were getting kind of ignored, and if they could control those, they could.
Yeah, because I think that's how Youngkin came in on that, because they
started playing.
They realized, like, hey, if we have Republican governors, we can do this,
and so previously you had one other, at least in the modern era, mid-district or mid-decade redistricting, and that was Texas in 2003. You have these moments going back where, if we're playing the yeah but game, we can keep going all the way back to 17 whatever.
Yeah,
and so recognizing,
I think at the end of the day, like, I think it's just understood. Like, you can call it whatever. Like, both sides can call it whatever they want. But they're like, for me, I would like, for my side, what I would like to say to my side is, start running candidates that represent all the people, not just your, like, people need to understand when they run for office, if this is my new district, run somebody in that district that can, like, be a representative of all that. And it's not going to be one extreme to the other. And I think that's,
so there's one key difference in this story though. Okay. And this is the part where from the national picture that I think is more so in my favor. Okay. Which is, as much as every side does it, and as much as you're absolutely right that ideally you want to run the candidate that represents the district that they're in, and not someone who will represent the will of whoever's pulling the strings in Congress.
I'm not even saying the pulling the strings. I think this is the way I look at it: is you have 100 voters, right? 40 of them are far right. Okay. 40 of them are far left, right? And then you got 20 that are like, I like this part of this part. I like this. And so, like, for me is, it does not make sense to sit there and run a candidate that is like, I'm going to go far left or far right so I don't lose my core. Because I feel like both parties are doing that. I think both parties are like running to the far edges of both sides because those are the loudest sides. The far left side is loud. The far right side is loud. The general population, I don't think feels like that.
But
I don't
generally know, but it's easier to pitch to that side.
It's easier, but you're running for office. Like, it's not, this isn't a pitch. It is like, it is.
But think about right now when you look at presidential popularity right now, how he's viewed, it's anywhere between 33% approval and 40% approval. But what is the one group of his approval base that has barely faltered? And that's the MAGA Republicans.
No.
That's the far right. So what I mean by that is, if you solidify your base, it's easier to try and pull people a little more your way, appeal to a couple more things, than I'm in the middle and I'm trying to pull far left and far right to me. Because based on your number, if it's 40 and 40 and 20, if I'm starting with a 40% base, I only need to gain 11%.
But that's where that's what I'm saying. That's where you're off. I feel like the candidates are off. It should be, I'm representing, whether you voted for me or not, I still have a responsibility to provide governance and provide you representation. If this is important to you, it might not, as long as it doesn't go against what I believe ethically and everything else, I still need to hear that, and I need to take it in.
You look at affordability.
It's an opposing, everyone it's an opposing view.
$4 a gallon at the gas tank or at the pump, like that affects everyone equally.
Do me a favor and look up what the approval rating for Congress is right now, because I think it's
low.
Yeah,
I think it's like 26% or something. It's low.
Yeah, and so
Congress is viewed as, I would argue, not knowing, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that this current Congress, the 119th or 118th Congress, is viewed as the most ineffective Congress we have ever had, at least in the modern era. 10%.
I just want people to follow that. Like, they want to say Donald Trump this, Spanberger this, but like, your elected representative, less than 10% of the population approves of what you're doing.
Correct.
You are the problem.
Yep.
So if they're redistricting, look at yourself as the problem. Be part of the solution. You got 90%.
Well, and so this goes back to, so you look at it and you go,
thank you.
This is with the redistricting where I feel there's a fundamental difference between the left and the right. And it's this, the right, the GOP's position on redistricting is positional. We're for it if it benefits us, Texas, Florida, Missouri. We are against it if it's a Democrat state trying to do it. We had the president himself come out and say, Virginia State Supreme Court, you have to overturn this injustice of the people, yet supported Texas. So to me, I look at it as the GOP side tends to be more positional. If it's good for us, it's good. If it works against us, it's bad. Whereas the Democrat side, while still doing these things that they're against, and I'll come back to this, is more...
You have me on the edge of my seat on
is more reactive in it, because yes, they do it. Yes, at least, and I'm going to talk more in the modern era, more in my lifetime of awareness, the 2000s and on. Absolutely, they do it. But if you look at right now, California, Virginia, that is directly in response to other people's actions. And the reason why I say that the Democrats are in a slightly different situation or different boat than the Republicans is because they've tried to get rid of it. On 3 instances in the last decade, 2016, 2021, and in 2025, Democrats have put forward legislature to outlaw gerrymandering and commission and use independent redistricting commissions across the board. In
So,
2015,
but what does that mean when you're on the losing end of that and you go, well, that doesn't apply? So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that you can put up and say, well, the Democrats wanted to do this, but yet they're the ones that did the exact same thing. And I'm
glad you brought that up.
It's hypocrisy on both sides.
I was driving down here trying to think of what analogy.
You had like 2.5 hours.
So this is what I came up with, and let me know how it works.
All right.
I came down here with what analogy would best represent what that means.
Okay.
So the premise is both sides do it. One side thinks it's bad and tries to stop it, but they do it anyway. So that's hypocritical, right? So Republicans use gerrymandering. They say they're against it, but they haven't done anything to try and prevent it. Democrats have tried to prevent it. They put legislature up in 2016, 2021, 2025 to try and prevent it, but then they still do it. So even though they're the ones screaming gerrymandering bad, they're still the ones doing it, right? And that's hypocritical.
You're talking about the Republicans are.
No, both are.
Okay, both.
I'm more so focusing on the argument that Democrats say gerrymandering is terrible, but then they still do it. That's a hypocritical statement or stance, right? So here's my analogy. You're a Georgia Bulldogs fan, right?
Yes.
So if you were, they're SEC, right? Yeah, SEC.
That's the only conference in the country.
Pretty much. But if they're sitting there and they go, okay, the 2027 recruiting class is coming out, and they who's Alabama the big rival for Georgia, or generally?
I mean, the whole country hates Georgia, but that's
the whole country hates Alabama too.
Well, that's just because they win.
But let's say we're sitting there, and you're looking at Georgia. You're the Georgia recruiter, and you're looking at Alabama, and you realize they found a loophole. They found a little way to what technically could be considered a violation of NCAA recruiting rules.
Okay.
That isn't closed, but it's still there, and they're using it, and they're taking your 4- and 5-star recruits. They're picking that quarterback you want. They're picking that running back you want. And you're looking here going, guys, that's illegal. They can't do that. And everyone's saying, yeah, it's bad, but there's nothing against it right now.
Okay.
And you're going before the NCAA commissioner or whatever and putting forth like, hey, let's ban this. We need to close this loophole. We need to ban this rule. And it's, no, he's kind of an Alabama fan. So he's like, oh, no, it's fine. It doesn't actually violate anything. And fundamentally it's wrong.
Okay.
And you're getting your ass beat by Alabama every year because they're doing this and they're taking your players. So you get to a point and you go, all right, well, I'm going to use that loophole. I'm against it, but I'm tired of getting my butt kicked every single time. So I'm going to use it to get that quarterback. I'm going to use it to get that running back.
Okay.
That's what the Democrats are doing. They're opposed to this version of just cracking and packing, modern Democrat, my era of Democrats. This cracking and packing and brutalizing the districts just to cut out seats. But they realize if they don't, they're just going to keep getting beat up on, and they're never going to have a chance to outlaw it at the federal level. So Georgia, I probably should have switched this, but Georgia, my folks, are sitting here going, we know that what about Alabama is doing is wrong. Alabama's not going to do anything to get rid of it because they're benefiting from it.
Right.
We know that right now, the people in power in the NCAA are kind of looking the other way because it's either not the fight they want to have, or the dude that is in charge of the NCAA is from Alabama, went to Alabama. He's a Roll Tide guy.
Okay.
So Georgia sits there and goes, as much as we know that this is wrong, and as much as we want this ended, the only way we stand a chance of competing and maybe ending up in a position to do something about it is if we also use it, is if we also set it up in a situation, because otherwise Alabama's just going to keep running the score up on us and winning national titles. So ideally, where this all circles back, in 2025, after Texas started doing its thing, Alex Padilla, I want to say, congressman or senator out of Arizona, put forward a bill just outlawing gerrymandering and wanting independent commissions, redistricting commissions, at every census for every state.
Right.
So where I think Democrats put the money where their mouth is if they go the way things, hopefully for them, they want them to, which is they take over the House, is when they do that, the very first thing, or within the first couple things they need to do, is don't impeach Trump. That's not, you're just going to play into it. Like, your first series of events is every single thing that the Republicans have looked at you and said, you say you don't like this, but you still do it. Put the legislature in. The very first thing, that Alex Padilla anti-gerrymandering bill, put it on the House floor, pass it through the House with Democrats if they have the power, force Republicans to put their money where their mouth is and either vote in agreement with it and say, hey, you're right, it's wrong, let's end it, we're all on the same page here. It's just because right now we are just in a race to the bottom on this thing. It is just getting worse and worse. And so, first thing, single issue, put this up. Hey, put your money where your mouth is. Are you really against gerrymandering, or are you only against it when we do it? And pass it through the House. Make the Senate do the same thing. Make the Senate vote yes or no on whatever it is, and see where people truly stand. Because at the end of the day, the only way, there's so much of these conversations where it's, oh, well, we're doing it because the Republicans did it. The Republicans are doing it because the Democrats did it. Well, at some point, someone has to step up and be the big kid in the room and say, okay, enough is enough. We might take the L on this or whatever, but we have to stop. Republicans have been in power for a year now, House, Senate, presidency, claim to hate gerrymandering when people do it, have done nothing to stop it. But Democrats have. To your point earlier, this is that circle back of people being elected and then doing the bidding, like being kind of at the whim of others because they feel like they have to do it. In that 2021 legislation put forward by the Democrats, part of it was overturning Citizens United and trying to cut out dark money, these corporate super PACs funding candidates for the House, for the Senate, for the president, for all of that. Because when you look at the funding of political figures, it's hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars, and then Citizens United pass, and it's hundreds of millions, billions of dollars into this funding. And that's where all that corporate money comes in, and that's where it's like, hey, I got you elected, so now you have to vote no on that EPA bill that would make me have to spend $100 million to fix my pharmaceutical plant in Floyd, Michigan, or Flint, Michigan, or wherever. Okay. And so where you look at is you start seeing, so the 2021 got overturned because gerrymandering was part of this big campaign reform bill, campaign finance reform bill. It had voter ID in it. It had getting dark money and super PACs out of it, overturning Citizens United, ending gerrymandering, all this kind of stuff. And so it was easy to be like, oh, it was just part of a bigger bill that people were against. But the 2025, 2016 were more single issue bills. And so to me, we're at this moment in history where everyone seems to be pretty much opposed to gerrymandering. Whoever wins in November has the opportunity to sit there and say, as much as there are these other things, like, we can start doing these single issues. We can start recognizing, because California, Virginia, a handful of other states, Massachusetts, I think, maybe New York, surprisingly, not many red states use independent redistricting commissions, essentially taking, 10 people from the left, 10 people from the right, and a couple people down the middle to approve these new maps for states to make them more fair. Because the hard thing, too, that you run into when it comes to these, my brother loves to bring this up, is you look at states like Massachusetts or the areas where 30% of the state is Republican, but they have zero representation or one representative in the House. And where things get really hard, and this is kind of a fault within the system, is if you set up a map to be equally proportioned, again, 100,000 people, and 70,000 of them are Republicans and 30,000 of them are Democrats, if you do it evenly, you're probably going to end up with 10 districts that have 70% Republican, 30% Democrat, just by the nature of the numbers. And so that state, while it has legal maps that are as they are supposed to be, which is based on population, you're going to have zero representation from Republicans. So there is a certain degree of gerrymandering that is necessary if you want to make sure that Republicans in a state have a voice, because there are certain hurdles you just cannot overcome if the state population, voting wise, isn't closer to 50-50. Because then, like I said, if you're in a 70-30 state, that 30%, unless you pack it all together, it's going to get overwhelmed in almost any district you make.
Well,
That's where that independent commission comes
so
in.
my personal opinion on that is, I think the problem is that both sides are trying to appease the far sides, and they're allowing them to set the agenda. So I'm gonna throw you a curveball here at the very end.
Go for it.
What are 3 things on a national level that you think I, as a Republican, would that you feel like you could get the majority of Democrats to support and the majority of Republicans to support? 3 nationwide things
That both sides would probably go for if it was a standalone issue.
Yeah, so no attachments, because that's you're spot on. Part of the problem is people attach things, and it screws things up. And I'm gonna put this out there because I learned it from reading a book, which I know everybody's surprised I know how to read. It's not audio.
They don't realize they're picture books.
Yeah, they're sticker books.
Yep.
But one of the things I think is really interesting about the House of Representatives is every new Congress rewrites their laws and bylaws, and they can totally change the way they do things every year. Every 2 years, when the new Congress is seated, they rewrite the laws. Sometimes some of them are boilerplate. But
the bylaws of Congress.
Yeah, on how it's operated. Yeah. So they could totally change within the Constitution, as long as they stay within the Constitution. Their bylaws on majority and all the other stuff on how things are done can be rewritten.
So do you want these 3 things to be 3 national policies or 3?
3 national policies.
Because I had one that was 3 policies for Congress.
No, just 3 national policies that you feel like both sides could get behind. So I'll give you my 3. I think public safety. I think public safety, people across this country do not feel safe in their own homes, in their own communities.
Okay.
I think it requires a conversation on mental health and all the different things. But if you bring people to the table with that central theme of I want you as an American to feel safe inside your home. So public safety. The second one that I think of is press. I feel like people should be able to get behind a free press that is not extreme on both sides. It should be, because I'm reading a book about Iran and how things get so sideways inside their country because they've suppressed the press and they've suppressed what is supposed to be going out, and that's how they control what they do. And I think these big news organizations are doing us a huge disservice because, like what we talked about earlier with the Epstein files, is if they decide it's not important, you're not going to hear it. It's not going to be national news. They decide. And the other one is healthcare, because I think healthcare is I think it's a shame that our country is like a third world country at this point because of the healthcare system that we have. We have hospitals. You're making appointments and it's months out before you get to them. And I feel like our healthcare is at a third, and there's plenty of blame to go on both sides, but I feel like if you really got into it, I didn't mention immigration because I feel like that is I don't feel like anybody has the appetite to deal with that, honestly, because I feel like.
Well, I think the thing that's hard with your 3. So I actually agree with pretty much the 3 that you said. Yeah.
So what are your 3?
Well, so the interesting thing with that is it becomes like healthcare, as we've experienced in the last year. It's not a simple subject. It involves so many others. So to your scale of things, I would say campaign reform.
Okay.
Both with, you look at districting, you look at finance, you look at how balloting and campaigning is actually done, equal representation and all that kind of stuff, making sure people have access to things, make Election Day a federal holiday, that type of stuff. So campaign reform, I think a lot of people could get behind. Term limits or caps at least. I think a lot of both sides would pretty well get
Maybe we
behind.
should build it in as until you're at a 50% approval rating, you can't run for re-election.
Well, so there was funny you say that. Warren Buffett said a thing way long ago that was like, if the debt to GDP ever exceeds like 5% or something, no one on Congress would be allowed to run again. Like, you'd have to completely overhaul. He's like, you would get it fixed real quick if people are about to lose.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, so I think healthcare. Well, so to not use yours.
Well, you can. I mean, if we agree on something, then there you
I
go.
agree with you on healthcare. To me, veterans, I think we do them a disservice. I think we complain about, mental health and all these types of things that greatly affect the veteran community, and then we underfund the VA and support services for them. So I would say Veterans Affairs. I think we could get behind improving that. Term limits.
And you said campaign finance
And campaign finance reform. And then I would say, if we go to specifically Congress, one that I've heard people say, and I really do get behind it, is your congressional salary is the mean salary of the district you represent. So if the average income of your district is $100,000, you make $100,000. If the average income of your district is $30,000, you make $30,000. And if that's not enough, work to make it better in your district for your people. Make them earn what their people earn.
So one of the things I've always liked about you, Connor, is you're performance based. You want to see a government that's performance based, and you have that side of you that saw in the way you were raised is helping other people in social programs and things like that. But like at the end of it, which I think most people are missing, which I think that's why Congress is at 10%, is they're failing.
I want to say that the 118th Congress, this last one, they passed fewer laws, and I get that there was a shutdown in there and all this other stuff, but they passed fewer laws than any other Congress ever. They did fewer work, but they did fewer.
But that's the whole problem.
They did less of their job than any other Congress.
But I think that's the whole issue. The whole issue is that we've, as a population, take all the gerrymandering and everything else, have just accepted that our government is an utter failure.
Absolutely, and it's not for the people anymore.
And that, I think gerrymandering just distracts us from the fact of like, y'all suck at your job.
Well, and it's one where I view gerrymandering as, this is you trying to hold on to a position you no longer deserve to have by rigging the system. If you are so terrible that you have not done the job of your people and you get voted out, you should not be able to rework your district to be more favorable to you.
No, I don't disagree with
You're done. Like, I don't get to, Georgia, I don't get to be losing to Alabama 35-0 at halftime and then go recruit all of the NFL players from the Atlanta Falcons to come play for me so I can win in the second half.
No, I think that's, like I said, at the end of the day, I think we can go back and forth as far as like who did what and everything else. But at the end of the day,
someone has to be the one to just say enough is enough.
Yeah, and I think the general population needs to step up and say, and stop looking at all these flashy things that are attracting your attention, this war, assassination attempt, gerrymandering and everything else, and look at the fact of like, what exactly what are our elected representatives bringing back to us? Because as far as I'm concerned, they're not doing well.
And I think it needs to be the push from the people to whatever, like, write the emails, make phone calls, whoever it may be, talk to your representatives as you can, but sit there. And for me, as someone who, I do lean left of center, as I told you earlier, apparently I'm a Rockefeller Republican, but that's a whole outdated
R&R, rest and relaxation.
But I look at it and I go, for me, what will be a major failure and that I will own and fully be just as aggressive against is if Democrats if they win the House, and specifically if they also win the Senate, if they start that next Congress just doing petty stuff, trying to get vengeance on the administration for wrongdoings or whatever, while that may be necessary at some point, to me, the important thing is to come out and say, we've been saying that this administration is not doing right by the people. so now we are. If
No,
they come out
100%.
and they don't, and they just go on a vendetta,
I don't.
I'm over
I the one thing I think about is I don't think either side it's a vendetta as much as it is a smokescreen to help you ignore the fact they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
So, all right, buddy.
Yeah, man.
You had 2.5 hour lead time on me to figure things out. I guess on your ride home you'll figure out other things for the next time.
Hey, we're just solving world problems.
That's right. It's easy to do it from these comfortable chairs.
It is.
So.
It's very nice.
And it was like taking care of us. So anyway, appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
And I hope everybody has a good week.